Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to bind an embroidery hoop. Now this is something that not everybody does, but it's actually a very important part of the embroidery process. The point of a binding embroidery hoop is that when you put your bound hoop in, and this is one I've done earlier, once you put that in with your fabric over the top of it, this makes a world of difference in helping your fabric stay secure in the hoop. Now, if you don't use one of these, you may have seen it in your work before or other people's work, that you can end up with pucker in the fabric because as you're using the needle and it's going in and out, the fabric moves and it slips. Now, if you can see the difference between this, it gives a lovely, lovely tight finish. And obviously my hoop isn't even tight, but it's a world of difference and that really grips the fabric. It's well worth doing. So that's one I've done earlier, and it's just a bright pink so you can see it a bit better on the camera. Now this is done using cotton twill tape. Now I've got some of it here. It usually comes on a massive big roll, but it is quite inexpensive. Now hopefully at the minute on the screen you can see the sizes. I'm giving you an idea of how much twill tape to cut, and this will make things far easier because it's too hard working off a roll. So just for a bit of speed today, I'll show you how to do a 4-inch. Now you can bind both the inner hoop and the outer hoop, but you would usually only do that if you're working with a slippy fabric. If you're going to be embroidering on cotton or linen, you don't really need to do that. So I'm going to take the outer hoop away. We'll not do that today. So this is the inner hoop. And the first thing I like to do is trim it at an angle. It makes it far easier to sew at the very end. So you should have an angle roughly like that. Now it's important when you're binding your hoop, you start from the inside. The outside needs to be smooth. There's a smaller one I've shown. As you can see, it's nice and smooth, no bumps and lumps. So I'm going to show you wonder clips, very commonly used in dressmaking, but they're very, very grippy and they're great. But if you don't have access to those, you can always use a bulldog clip or even a clothes peg. Now you're going to start out, and it's very, very important to not do it like this. Don't be trying to keep it straight and wrapping like that. It must be at an angle. The reason for that is your cotton twill tape doesn't stretch if you pull it this way. I'm trying to pull it apart, but if you pull it at a 45-degree angle like this in any direction, you'll see that it's got stretch, and it's that 45-degree angle that'll let you wrap it round and give you a bit of flexibility. So you can see it here. I'm just going to put my first clip on and then pull it through towards the inner hip and towards your tummy. Now the important thing is get your finger on the first bit, and you must line up nice and even. Can you see that there? What you don't want to do, you don't want to overlap it, and you don't want gaps. It has to butt gently against it, a bit like wallpapering. And when you're doing this, keep the tension on. Don't let it go springy, don't let it go loose. And again, we're always going that angle there, not straight. Once you get round a little bit, you might want to put another clip on it just in case you accidentally let go. It'll save you having to rewrap. And when you're doing it, if you see any little gaps, don't be afraid to use your fingernail and close those up. Now I'm almost at the end, so I'm going to use another clip just so I can free up a hand. And then what I'll do, I'll move this clip just over a little bit out of the road. Now, once you get to the very end, absolutely okay to overlap here. The reason being, when you put this together, your end, your join, is going to go right in the middle, so it doesn't actually matter, as long as the rest is nice and smooth, no bumps, no overlaps. And you'll just want to tighten that bit up there and make sure it's clamped properly there. I'm just going to move that a little bit fiddly, but it's worth doing. Now what I'll do, I'll wrap it right over, and I will cut this in a minute or two, but it's important to get a couple of stitches in first. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is remove that. Now you might see, might have a little bit of gaps on the inside, but as long as the outside's fine, don't be worried about that. So we need to sew it in two places, down here and down there. So it's handy if you have your needle pre-prepared like me. I'm just using normal cotton sewing thread here today. Now, ideally, you'll have at least one hoop at this size. What I do is, I'll only ever do this once. I'll bind this hoop, and then I will use this just for sewing, and I'll reuse it again and again and again. And I display my actual finished piece in a separate hoop altogether. If you can't do that and you don't have another hoop to hand, don't worry, you can just snip this off at the very end. I'll move that clip across. And now I've got a few stitches to secure that. You don't want an overlap at the outer edge, so I'll flip that back and cut that down a little. That's absolutely okay to do this at an angle, as long as you've nothing coming up over the top. And another few stitches just to secure that. If you do intend to keep this cotton twill tape on the hoop, then you're far better taking a bit of time now and doing this properly. Will find about twill tape is it does fray very easily, so I use a product that's called Stop Fraying. It's pretty much like a fabric glue, and if you use a little bit of this, this will stop it fraying. And just dab it on. You can use your finger. And I would leave that for about an hour to set. Just keep all the glue on the inside, remember, keep the outside nice and clean. And there you go, that's you good to go. Thanks for watching.